Lois's birthday, January 28th. She will be a centenarian, and I fully expect a full volume of poems. The centenarian does this, the centenarian does that. Because in her most recent book, it's the nonagenarian, and I believe before that was the octogenarian. And so I expect a full volume of these poems. I've known Lois for a little while, since way back when she was only about 86%, so for about the last 14 years. And Lois doesn't know this, but this summer I was thinking much about her and her poems when I was rereading a lot of the poet Laureate Niedecker. And I don't know if Lois knows her poems or not, but I've loved Laureate Niedecker's. And is this volume okay? I've loved Laureate Niedecker's poems for a long time. And my rereading of her poems was spurred on by reading the recent biography, Laureate Niedecker, A Poet's Life, which I found in the shelf right here in the Penrose Library around about the time of the Waldo Canyon fire. And there's some interesting biographical parallels between Niedecker and Lois. Niedecker was born in 1903, so just 10 years before Lois was born. And though Lois was born in Idaho, as I understand it, she grew up in a little town in Wisconsin, just as Niedecker did. Niedecker grew up in a place called Black Hawk Island. Lois comes from a place called Vesper. Is that Vesper, Wisconsin? And if there is a better place name for an American poet's origin, I can't think of it. Vesper is just perfect. I mean, I think it beats Chicago, which is mine. It beats Sandusky. Paducah's pretty good. Paducah's good, but not as good as Vesper. There's some other biographical parallels. Both Niedecker and both Lois had some privations during the Great Depression. They both had relatively late publication, and they both have ardent vocal admirers. And even beyond those biographical coincidences, like Niedecker's poems, I find Lois's poems to possess a very sensitive lyric ear, a knack for arresting imagery, an acute perception of the exterior and interior worlds, and both of their poems plunge very swiftly right to the pith of things. And I would say that the best of Niedecker's work is as fine as any of Lois Hayna's. And so I mentioned reading a lot of Laureate Niedecker, but the fact is there isn't a lot of Laureate Niedecker to read. Her poems tended to be almost epigrammatically brief. She didn't publish a whole lot, but they're gorgeous little poems. And I'll give you a couple brief examples of those, and then a couple examples of Lois's poems. This is a small untitled poem from Niedecker. There's a brief shine on the There's a better shine on the pendulum than is on my hair, and many times I've seen it there. And a little poem called Kepler. Comets, you say, shoot from nothing? In heaven's name, what other than matter can be matter's mother? Fortunately, very fortunately for us, Lois is jealousy-inducingly prolific. She writes a lot and she publishes a lot, and that's very, very, very fortunate for us. And as I mentioned, I'd like to read a couple of Lois's poems. I haven't conferred with our other speakers, so there's every chance you might hear these poems again, but there's nothing wrong with hearing Lois's poems plenty of times. So this is from her 2005 book, Keeping Still. This poem is called Dark Mischief. The antic shadow of the crow clowns the crow's path, shape-shifting across lawns, leveling along pavement, scrambling in swift and comic angles over obstacles. Mimic and mindless, it speeds its carbon route, shredding and reuniting seamlessly as the crow follows its black agenda. Then it vaults in crazy angles up the wall, arriving exactly as the crow arrives, barely in time to dart under and vanish at the precise moment the crow tucks his wings. This bird's unflappable. He perches in charge of his world. His shadow has to catch its breath. And this second poem is from Lois's most recent book. A couple years ago, his book came out, Casting Two Shadows, Censored Scenes. Leaves fell, were falling, were fallen. Sky pale but clear and not falling. Nothing portended, yet everything reeked of omen, sleeked itself against cold, and, boldened with color, goldened the oldening year. What other than leaves befell? She could never tell. Days fell, were falling. Days left no trace on lace of branches, on the face of a failed and failing year, to cover what might not, would not, could not return. What sifted deep into drifted leaves, falling to bury the year.
Wow.
So I'm going to say that Lois's poems themselves are extraordinary, but so are their circumstances. There are few poets who write as well and as much as Lois, and damn few, as Lois has done, who keep getting better as they get older. For that matter, statistically, poets tend not to get old. It's unfortunately true. William Butler Yeats's poems got better with age. So did Thomas Hardy's. More recently, the poets Ruth Stone and Marie Ponceau's poems get better. Philip Levine's most recent collections, I think, are as fine as anything he has ever done. But he's a relative adolescent at only 85. In addition to her poems, Lois provides the writing community here and elsewhere with her hard-working example and her pithy wisdom. A couple gems that I find particularly wise, because I happen to agree with them, are these, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit. The only muse is sitting down and writing, and the solution to a poem that isn't working is to write a new one. And I'm going to end with a personal note. A few years back, I suddenly found myself as a single father raising 3 children, and Lois caught wind of this, and I think more concerned about the children than anything else, she prepared a home-cooked meal for us. She made a roasted chicken, she made vegetables, she made potatoes, she had warm bread wrapped up in tinfoil. I was home by her house on the way home to pick up the kids, and there was this hot meal that she had made. And she was probably 94. And that was the best home-cooked meal my kids and I had that whole year. And it's true, because I'm a reasonable cook, but I'm not very good. I'm still grateful for that meal, and I'm grateful for Lois and her work. And like that meal, her presence and her poems are a nourishing gift. Please welcome Jim Scaletti.